You've got a major meeting coming up next month with President Xi. I want to get your take on China and how this shift in oil, particularly because of Iran, how does that change the dynamic of this meeting with President Xi?
I mean, he's somebody that needs oil. We don't. He's somebody I get along with very well. He just wrote me a beautiful letter.
He wrote you a letter?
Yeah, he did. He responded to a letter that I wrote because I had heard that China is giving weapons to, I mean, you're seeing it all over the place, to Iran, that China's
Did he say
giving
he's
weapons.
giving them?
Yeah, and I wrote him a letter asking him not to do that. And he wrote me a letter saying that essentially he's not doing that.
That was President Trump with me yesterday telling me about that letter that he sent to Xi Jinping, who told him that Beijing is, in fact, not aiding Iran in the conflict. We have seen reports to the contrary. This despite new reporting, Iran used a spy satellite from China to target U.S. military bases across the Middle East. Leaked documents show that the IRGC purchased the satellite in 2024 after it was launched into space by China. And it allowed Iran to capture images of major U.S. bases in Saudi Arabia and in Jordan. Meanwhile, Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent putting Chinese banks on notice, warning that they will face secondary sanctions if any Iranian money is seen flowing through their systems. Watch this.
We believe this blockade in the Straits, there will be a pause of Chinese buying, but I will tell you that two Chinese banks received letters from the U.S. Treasury. I'm not going to identify the banks, but we told them that if we can prove that there is Iranian money flowing through your accounts, then we are willing to put on secondary sanctions.
Joining me now is the Gatestone Institute senior fellow, Gordon Chang. Gordon, always a pleasure to see you. What do you make of Scott Bessent warning these Chinese banks? What do you know about this?
Well, first of all, China has been using its banks to funnel money to Iran. That's clear. Really, what I think he's threatening is invoking Section 311 of the USA Patriot Act, which allowed the Treasury to force U.S. banks to cut their corresponding banking relationships with anybody which is of primary money laundering concern. That means they can no longer transact business in dollars anywhere in the world. This is the financial equivalent of a nuclear weapon, and I'm glad that Secretary Bessent has threatened to use it because the Chinese have been involved in money laundering across the board.
Yeah. And now we see that China is slamming the president's blockade of the Strait of Hormuz, calling it, quote, a dangerous and irresponsible move. I asked President Trump about this yesterday. This is a departure of what the president told me in my exclusive interview. Watch this. Did you get any pushback, like from the Chinese or the Saudis, about blocking the Strait of Hormuz?
No, I had none.
The president also said this on Truth Social last night. China is very happy that I am permanently opening the Strait of Hormuz. I'm doing it for them also and the world. This situation will never happen again. President Xi will give me a big fat hug when I get there in a few weeks, writes the president, Gordon. We also learned that a Chinese oil tanker was forced to double back to Iran after it crossed the strait. So they can't be happy that the U.S. is blocking them. Russia is now reportedly offering to help Beijing with any domestic energy shortfalls, Gordon. Well, we knew that Russia was going to try to come to the rescue here. Your thoughts?
Yes. Russian Foreign Secretary Sergei Lavrov was in Beijing yesterday and actually met Xi Jinping, talked about this. The U.S. blockade is one of the most important things that the United States can do. This is really good for the United States because what it does is it creates fairness in the Strait of Hormuz. If the Iranians are not going to allow our ships through, then we're not going to allow Iran's ships through. And it's been extremely effective. No ship has run that blockade since it went into effect. And I think this has the capacity, the potential of ending the war quickly because the Chinese need stuff going through the Strait of Hormuz, not just oil, but also goods. So I'm glad that President Trump imposed this, and this is really one of the best things we can do to end this war quickly.
Well, I wonder how significant secondary sanctions would be, which is what Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent is talking about, Gordon.
These are extremely effective because it means a bank cannot transact business anywhere. The only thing I'm concerned about is that when Secretary Bessent warns a specific bank, the Chinese will just move that activity to another bank.
Right.
So
that makes
really,
sense.
So really what it's important is for, I think, the Treasury to actually impose those sanctions, show the Chinese that we have the will to do it, because I think they believe that we won't, because this is such an effective measure.
Ashley Davis is with me this morning. Ashley, is there a role for Congress here? Because, you know, we're going to talk with John Molinar in a few minutes, and he's, of course, the chairman of the China Select Committee. What do you think?
I don't know. I mean, I guess, Gordon, what do you think Congress can actually do? I mean, what I think that Chairman Molinar has been doing fabulously with China in general is making sure that they are being asked the right questions. And I'm really following this, and I want to know what you think about what they're saying about Airbus. And is Airbus really part of the imagery that was sent to China right before the war started, or we attacked?
I'm sure. We got to remember that what China did was it gave Iran access to that T-01B satellite. They allowed the IRGC to use those ground stations, which means the IRGC had complete control over that Chinese satellite. And it used it to look at not only the base in Saudi Arabia, but the one in Kuwait. The one in Kuwait's really important because that was the one where a Chinese drone flown by Iran killed 6 American service members. So, yes, they're looking at Airbuses. They're looking at everything.
Well, Gordon, Beijing, according to reports, is preparing new legal measures to counter the U.S. and other foreign companies against its interest. Ahead of the president's visit next month, Xi Jinping told foreign officials this week that the world cannot return to, quote, the law of the jungle, where superpowers ignore international law, according to Xi Jinping. Real quick here.
Yeah, well, the Chinese have been ignoring international law, and that's the reason why President Trump said, we're not going to allow the Chinese to violate all these rules. We have got to change the system because we cannot adhere to rules that the Chinese won't.
Gordon, good to see you as always. Thank you, sir. Gordon Chang joining us this morning on China. We'll be right back.